Hey everyone, welcome to Danny Chats. This is episode number 15, and today I'm joined by Rhonda. Hi Rhonda, how are you?
I'm doing great, Danny, and I'm so excited to be here talking with you.
Yeah, because we've obviously conversed like a few times recently and stuff.
Yes, you've been a great help with the Wilson Disease Association's annual conference, putting some of your videos together that we could use for that purpose. And it was a great time collaborating with you on that.
Yeah, I was honored to be asked. It's really nice to be able to help and share these videos with as many people as possible.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned the Wilson's Disease Association. You set that up, or you are part of the group that set it up, is that right?
Well, I'm officially now a board member, so I'm very
Yeah.
excited about that to be involved in contributing and trying to help increase awareness for Wilson disease, in the United States and all over the world.
Yeah, because obviously you have your own personal reasons for that, so we can talk a bit about that. You was diagnosed with Wilson's disease. I was reading in your blog, but I can't remember how old you were. So do you want to go from sort of maybe like before your diagnosis, if you was ill, or
Absolutely. And I was a little bit older than you when I was diagnosed. I was 21. It
yeah,
was the beginning of my last year in college. And I went into liver failure. Looking back, though, I can tell you that it was very insidious. It kind of developed over a couple of years, but because it was so slow, I really didn't realize that I was getting sick.
yeah,
But I finally did go to the emergency room because I woke up one day and I was jaundiced. My skin was yellow, the whites of my eyes were yellow, and some of my friends actually encouraged me to go and get help. So I'm very grateful that they did that. And then I'm very fortunate that it took maybe about a month for doctors to figure out that the cause of the Wilson disease or the liver failure was Wilson disease.
yeah. Because I was reading in your blog, and at first they'd cancelled Wilson's disease out through
They
through one of the tests.
They did. And what it is people with Wilson disease have something called low ceruloplasmin. We all have ceruloplasmin, and
Yeah,
it's a copper carrying protein that we have. And so people with Wilson disease, it's low, but I was low normal. And because of that, they discounted it. But that is something that's very important for people to know that they can have Wilson disease and still be in the somewhat normal range with their ceruloplasmin.
yeah. So you were lucky and you got the diagnosis, and then what medication did they start you on?
They started me on penicillamine, and in
Yeah.
1983, when I was diagnosed, that was the only approved medication in the United States for Wilson disease. And at the time, the doctors told me that it should work well for me if I take it every day for the rest of my life. But they also said that some people do have side effects and they can't tolerate it. And they said, well, if that happens to you, we have another drug that's in development called trientine, and
Yeah.
it's by the brand name Cyprine. So that was on the horizon at that time, but I responded very well with penicillamine and took it for about 20 years.
So when you say you had liver failure and you took yourself to the doctors, there wasn't a point where you got admitted where you were so ill, or was you lucky enough that your friends persuaded you and you managed to get it before you ended up in hospital?
Well, when I walked into the emergency room at the hospital, and I was greeted by someone admitting patients, she just looked at me and she said, "We need to admit you." I think it
Yeah,
was my yellow skin, my yellow eyes. Looking back, as I said, that it was very insidious. And that previous summer, I had become extremely fatigued. I would sleep a lot on weekends. I had a job that I had had the previous summer that I did very well at, but the second summer, I started making a lot of silly mistakes, and I really
yeah,
couldn't understand why. And I also noticed that I was becoming a little more irritable. And I noticed things like I would bruise easily and I had some swelling in my legs. But when you're 21, you just kind of think,
brush it
oh,
off.
right, like this will go
Yeah.
away. I'm working really hard, so that's why I'm tired, or
Yeah.
because I'm so under stress, maybe that's why I'm making mistakes or irritable. So it was very easy to think that there was another cause, and I just didn't take it too seriously at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not something that you initially think is like, how ill am I? You just, like you say, you just get on with it.
Right.
And all these symptoms do build up, and then it gets to that point where it's just that big tipping point, isn't it?
Yes, it's definitely, I did reach that tipping point, and I'm just so grateful that they were able to diagnose it and start treatment before my liver completely failed. And at that time, there was not a liver transplant program at the University of Wisconsin where I
Really?
was. Uh, Within the following year, they did develop one, but at that time, that wasn't an option. So again, I count my blessings, and I'm so grateful that the treatment worked.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the good thing about Wilson's, or the medication is once you're on it, it really can do the business.
Yes, yes. And so what I was diagnosed in 1983, and I did switch after 20 years on penicillamine to zinc, and I've done well on that as well. And again, if you take your medication every day, as your doctors tell you to, and make sure that you go in to the doctor, get your appointments once or twice a year, or whatever they recommend, I think you can have a really high quality life,
Yeah.
a terrific life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I speak to so many people that have, just been on the medication, and they were at a real vital, dangerous point in life as well, from the illness, and then they just fully recover, which is great.
Yes, it is. And so that's really a message for hope for people out there. And as you have learned from talking to so many people with Wilson disease, we're all different, and the course of
Yeah.
the illness is different. So you never really know. So we all just do the best that we can. And Danny, I do want to bring up just looking back, because I think some of these little points are important for people as far as trying to catch a diagnosis. About 6 months before I was diagnosed, I did go through a period of having really severe abdominal pains, and
Yeah.
so bad for a week that I couldn't go to my college classes and ended up on academic probation because of the pain. And I did go to a doctor at that time, and he just dismissed it and said that I was drinking bad water when I had gone on a trip with my friends over spring break,
Yeah.
which is really, if you think about it, a ridiculous explanation, but that's what I was told. So I just continued on. And so I do wonder if I was diagnosed at that time, would have that prevented some of the cirrhosis of the liver that I ended up developing. But I think it's just good for people to know that that can sometimes happen. And I also heard on one of your other chats with someone that they had an episode of mononucleosis when they were in high school.
Yeah.
That's something that I experienced too, and doing some of my research on Wilson disease. Others with the hepatic or liver form that we have had that experience too. So that's a common virus that teenagers often get.
Yeah, I think she was kind of misdiagnosed. I think they just shrugged her being ill off, yeah, as mono.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
yeah, like you say, I mean, Wilson's disease is so rare that when it does come into the doctor's view, it's, unless they actually know what they're looking for, it's so easy to skip over.
Right, it is, it is.
Yeah, 'cause I think my diagnosis only came because they said to my parents, they said, look, if we don't find out in the next 2 or 3 days what it is, but we're really sorry, but that's it. And someone came to the hospital for their yearly checkup, and obviously the doctors looked at him, looked at me, and went, let's get you tested for that. So I was just really lucky, really.
And what was it that they found that made the diagnosis for you?
To be honest, I can't really remember. I was so ill. But the main things when I got to King's was definitely the eye test. I think that's it. They didn't actually give me the diagnosis in Stevenage, my local hospital. They sent me straight to King's. And then King's did the diagnosis. So I would have thought it would be like the 24-hour urine test, and definitely the Kaiser-Fleischer rings. Because I spent hours at the optometrist there, because the King's College is a student hospital as well. So you have lots of students come around with the doctors, and there'd be quite often they'd say, can you go and sit down at the eye testing place so we can have a look? So, you'd go down there and there'd just be student after student coming to have a look because they'd never seen it before.
Yeah, that's what I recall from your story, that you had the Kaiser Fleischer rings, and
Yeah.
that was what finally got the doctors to make the right diagnosis for me. They brought me back in to see an ophthalmologist, and they found the rings.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's once you see that, I don't think it's that. ever occurs for any other reason. So, you know, that is a pretty pivotal point in diagnosis.
Absolutely.
So you were diagnosed, and then I know a bit about your sort of life and career. You went into journalism.
I did. I did. Actually, my first job out of college was working for a cancer center. I had a job as a communication specialist, and I got married. My husband and I moved from Wisconsin to Atlanta, and I had a connection at CNN and went in for an interview. And because I knew something about medicine, they gave me the job. It was an entry-level job in the medical news unit. And from there, I worked my way into reporting. I started, writing my own scripts and then working on my voiceovers and doing some on-camera work. And then that led to a full-time medical reporting job. And it was a really exciting career that I absolutely loved. And I ended up leaving in 2002 after we adopted our daughter from China. And I thought it was time to stay home with my family.
Yeah, that's really good. That's an exciting career because I know that led you to coming over to England at one point.
It did. It did. Well, I was, obviously I left CNN a while ago, but after that, I did a lot of freelance work in video production and medical communications. And I thought about writing a book about Wilson disease to
Yeah.
help raise awareness. So I have to admit, I've been working on it for about 10 years in between raising my family and doing my freelance work and other things that come up. But I found out through my research that Dr. John Walsh, who discovered the first treatment, penicillamine for Wilson disease, was still alive. And at the time, he was 98 years old and
Yeah.
United Kingdom there. And so I thought, as a journalist, what do you think? You think, oh my, I've got to fly over there. I need to meet him. I need to interview him. So I worked with Val Weeder, who is the contact person there with the Wilson Disease Support Group UK, to set up an interview with him. And also found out that Dr. Wilson's son, Dr. Wilson, who discovered our disease, that his son was still alive, and he was 96 at the time. And then also found out that Shirley Wiley, who's the one of the first patients that Dr. Walsh treated, she was nearing her 80th birthday, and she was also alive and doing well there in London. So I came over to interview them, and again, being a on-camera reporter, thought, well, I have to get them on camera. I've got to interview them. So that's what I did, and with the footage, I was so excited to meet these people and to hear their stories. I wanted to share it with everyone else with Wilson disease. So I put it together into a documentary, which I think is what you're talking about. And I entered it into a rare disease film festival here in the United States. And then later one in the UK, and have just been trying to, put it out there through social media to try to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah, I'll definitely add a link in here so that people can find it, and I'll put the link in the comments below. But that's amazing. I didn't realize you'd won an award for it as well.
Well, they're in the film festival,
Yeah.
so yes, I think it's an award just to be able to have the opportunity to have it seen
Yeah.
by wider audiences like that. And who knew that there were film festivals devoted to rare diseases? I think
Yeah.
it's exciting too.
Yeah, it's really good. And I watched some of the video earlier because there's a few clips on your blog. And the interesting thing was Dr. Walsh said that he when he went to get the medication, he tried it on himself first just to see if it was harmful.
Exactly, which isn't that something to think
Yeah.
about? That was in the 1950s,
Yeah.
and had the kind of regulations for drug approvals that you have today. I mean, today you wouldn't hear of doctors taking the medicine first to just make sure that it's
It's
safe.
okay.
But that was how he determined it was safe. He said, well, I took it and I was still woke up the next day. So if it's safe for me, it should be okay for the patients.
Yeah. And then, yeah, they did start rolling it out, didn't they? He said someone found him some patients and it started working. But well, another thing that struck me is the price. I mean, because I've seen that documentary on Netflix. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but Wilson's disease medication is featured in it. And obviously, speaking to a lot of people from America, I didn't realize because we don't really pay for our prescriptions. We pay a monthly, a small monthly fee maybe. But I didn't realize how much it cost in America.
You're absolutely right. And during the time that I took penicillamine, I never paid more than $60 a month for it. But in recent years, since like about 2014, 2015, the price of penicillamine in the United States just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So it could be like $30,000 a month. And that also happened with cyprine as well. So it was just been a travesty for Wilson disease patients in the United States. They've had to try to get medications from other countries and have it shipped in, which there really are no regulations to allow people to do that sort of thing. So that really was difficult for them. And then some people, thankfully were able to switch to zinc, which is very cost effective, but that doesn't work for everyone. So in the United States, it has been very difficult for Wilson disease patients. I think that it's gotten a little better recently, and there are some patient assistance programs to help patients, but people definitely went through a difficult time.
Yeah, and Dr. Walsh was not happy because he said it's cheap to make.
Yes, penicillamine, it's a derivative of the antibiotic penicillin.
Yeah.
So he said it's not that complicated to make, and there was never a patent on it. He wanted everybody to have access to it. So he was just shocked and very, very upset that so much was being charged for this medication, especially because the drug companies did not spend any time whatsoever researching or developing the drug. I mean, some medications in the United States are very expensive because of that, but in the case of penicillamine, that never happened. And the same thing with trientine, and trientine is even easier and cheaper to make, apparently.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because, well, it's just because they're greedy, I suppose. There is no explanation. There can't be an explanation.
You're exactly right.
Yeah,
And Dirty Money is the name of that
that's it.
series on Netflix, and the reporting on there was just excellent in really bringing to light what had taken place.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard. So, what have you got planned now? Like, obviously, you're working for the Wilson's Disease Association. You're putting on conferences, albeit they're, via the internet. What else is there going forward?
Well, with the Wilson Disease Association, we're working on some rebranding and updating the website, and so that's all very interesting, exciting work. And
Yeah.
so I am continuing with writing the book. And I actually began in earnest a year ago for the new year, starting to talk to Wilson's patients who have had liver transplants. And then we were hit by COVID, and that just kind of turned a lot of things in my life upside down with having all the family come here and live in our house. But I'm continuing with that work and determined to help continue to do what I can to raise awareness for our disease so more people can get diagnosed early and treated.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's the diagnosis, getting that diagnosis early.
Absolutely.
And then once that's happened, people can get that treatment. Well, hopefully, if they can afford it in America.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, you're right. But there's also some exciting news on the horizon for Wilson disease patients that we have, as you know, penicillamine, trientine, zinc, and then there is another medication that's in phase 3 clinical trials. It had been known as WTX 101, and it's changed names to when Alexion Pharmaceutical Company bought the rights to the drug. So that's very exciting that there could be a fourth option for people. And then gene therapy trials could begin. And that's also very exciting. And there are several pharmaceutical companies looking at that right now. And if it works, again, it's got to go through trials, but if it works, it's possible that there could be a cure for Wilson disease, or at least greatly reduce the need for medications as we know today.
Do you know much? Because I don't really know anything about gene therapy. So, I mean, I know you're not a doctor, but do you know anything about it, like the process or what happens?
A little bit. I'll try to say what I know to make it easy to understand. Well, we have a defect in our ATP, APT3 7B gene, Hope I got that right. So it's defective in people with Wilson disease. So what they do with gene therapy is they introduce a normal, healthy copy of that gene to take over for the defective gene. So then that would enable the liver to then process copper like people, like normally, like one else. And so that's where you would have a reduced need for medication or perhaps not need any medication at all. So you're replacing a defective gene with a normal copy of the gene.
Yeah, it's incredible science. It's good.
It really is. It really is. And there are several diseases where people have been able to be cured with gene therapy, and there's a lot of work being done for a number of genetic diseases where hopefully it will work, and we'll learn more in the next several years.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Brilliant. Is there anything else you wanted to add as we go in?
No, I think that you ask wonderful questions, Danny. I think it's terrific that you're doing these chats and talking to so many different people. I would just say that for anyone who is diagnosed with Wilson disease, just be sure you take your medication. Take it every day. You can't stop. And some people are diagnosed because of a sibling or another relative, and so they've never been ill. And so it can become kind of a chore or tedious to take a medication when you feel healthy and normal. But you really do have to take that medicine so you don't get sick. I think that's just the big message I'd want to say. And also, that I think there's a big community out there of people who are willing to share their stories so people can understand the different ways that this disease can be diagnosed. You and I have the hepatic or liver form, so some of the signs and symptoms are very different from people who have the neurological or the psychiatric form. So it's important to be just aware of those symptoms, and that's why it does make it so difficult to diagnose, because it's so different in so many people.
Yeah, I mean, I find it very hard to answer some of the questions I get, and when people say, will I need a transplant and things like that, and it's like, well, not necessarily. The medication could work, but it's very hard to give a definitive answer because everyone is different. For me, I mean, my liver was really scarred when I first went to the hospital when I was first getting diagnosed, and they said to me that they would like to do a liver transplant then, but I was being young and they told me about the medication, so I was like, no, I'd rather try that if I can. And luckily it worked for a long time for me. And even when they did my operation, the copper levels and everything were fine because I had been taking my medication. I had developed some other problems, like there was a clot onto the main artery. And like I say, I mean, it was badly scarred when I was younger, so it just got to a final point. But for anyone that hasn't had that bad scarring and things, yeah, medication's fine.
Well, and you make a really good point there, Danny. Your liver, from what I'm hearing from you, is likely that it was more damaged than mine was at diagnosis. Today, I could have been put on a transplant list at my diagnosis level, but it wasn't as totally severe as it can get. And so it could be that your scarring was just that severe, and the medication helped your liver hang on for a while, as you said. But we do have a patient registry trial underway that's being funded by the Wilson Disease Association in the United States, where they're trying to answer some of these questions and people more information. So we'd really encourage people to try to become a part of these types of studies. And I believe that there's something similar going on in the United Kingdom as well. So the more information we can gather, perhaps we can give people more precise information about those types of things, because I don't think doctors really know why some people, where their liver can function for a long time with medication, and for others, they go into that liver failure and transplantation is their only option.
Yeah, and another thing we didn't talk about is like diet, because obviously you're still on the medication. Because when I was on the medication, they said that I could eat what I want. So I speak to people, and I still advise people to do what they're comfortable with and do what their team tells them. But like I say, when I had my transplant and they looked at the levels, they were still fine. So I was eating chocolate, I was eating prawns. I suppose that's, what do you do?
Well, your advice to others is right, that you should talk to your medical team and follow what they suggest, because everyone is so different. When I was diagnosed, the doctor said that I should be watch out for chocolate, shellfish, nuts. Those are the big ones. And he said you can have some, but you probably don't want to have a steady diet of it, like not a hot fudge sundae every single day, because your medication, if you take it as you are supposed to, should be able to remove that excess copper, which is in some of those foods.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I have a
definitely.
fairly normal diet, but I do moderate those foods.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for the first year or probably 2 years after being diagnosed, I couldn't eat chocolate or anything because it just made me sick anyway. But like I say, once my levels and everything sort of leveled out, once my blood levels all leveled out, it was okay.
Well, and I think I was lucky that I always preferred vanilla to chocolate, so it kind of easy for me.
Yeah, that's good. Well, brilliant. Thank you very, very much for coming on and sharing your story. And like I say, great work with the Wilson's Disease Association. And it would be great once your book comes out to get you back on and we can sort of chat more about that again.
Oh, I would love to do it, and thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it and appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you. I'll let you get on with your day now. See you later.
Okay, bye, Danny.
Bye bye.